Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Mark Coudray. Hi, Mark.
How are you? Happy to be here.
Happy New Year. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Very good. So, Mark, I heard you on the Mike Michalowicz podcast, and you were there several times. You had an appearance there several times, and you definitely, with your words of wisdom and knowledge about business growth and whatnot, decided I'm going to have you on this podcast as well, so we can discuss specific points on how to accelerate business growth and also break a few myths in terms of common challenges and how they can actually be overcome, and not just said, oh, I can't get enough employees, or I can't do this, or this is the economy, or this is this, or this is that. And really look at it of what can people do in order to achieve the growth that they're looking for.
Excellent.
Very good. All right. Well, of course, we'll start with the bios. So you are a serial entrepreneur with 52 years of experience, internationally recognized as a thought leader for low-effort business growth. Mark is known, you are known, for your innovation and unique approach to problem solving. Anything else you would like to add to the bio?
No, I just think I have an insatiable drive to learn. Every day, I'm addicted to learning. So I'm always looking for things. I'm always looking for new perspectives. And in a role of being a thought leader, I don't really like that term, but to me, thought leader means that you're open and you're considering everything. And as a result of being able to be open and have multiple perspectives, you gain new insight into potential that is either not seen or is overlooked. And that's served me well over the last half a century.
That's great. So you started Coudray Technologies, Growth Technologies 36 years ago.
That's correct.
What inspired you to found the company?
I'm in the specialty graphics space was where I came from. And the specialty graphics is printing on non-traditional materials, fabric, plastic, metal, wood, all kinds of different things. Mm-hmm. And I was driven to find better ways and better technologies and better processes in that space. And it started off as Coudray Growth Technologies because I was using many diverse technologies to create better printing processes. But by the early 2000s, 2004, 2005, I recognized that traditional analog businesses were moving too slowly and were not profitable enough to keep pace with the speed of technology that was being driven by digital. And so I changed the name of the company from Graphic to Growth and focused on creating low effort, high value methodology so that companies could become much more profitable with less effort. That way they could keep up. And it's been a great journey along the way. We've had some phenomenal success doing that.
That's fantastic. Well, tell me about some of the strategies or methodologies that you use.
So during COVID, this is a perfect example. During COVID, I used that time to connect with businesses because I knew that they weren't going to be busy and they were going to be super stressed out because of the lockdowns and everything. So I used LinkedIn and to outreach and build my network there. And over that 1 year period from 2020 to 2021, I had over 9,000 connections. And I reached out on a personal basis to every one of those connections. And I said, business owner to business owner, I'd like to connect with you and set up a conversation to find out how this disruption is affecting your business in your industry, in your geographic area, independent of what we're hearing in the media. In other words, I wanted to find out boots on the ground what was actually going on. I continued by saying, I have nothing to sell, and my intention here is to try and understand on a bigger picture what's happening. I'm willing to share everything that I learn at no cost to you if it will help you in any way. And I had over 600 conversations from that. I put all of that into my AI model that I'd been using since 2015, way before any of the AI stuff. And we categorized the data that was coming back from these conversations to learn where the pressures were and what was going on. And what we learned from that was that businesses that were really large, and when I say large, I'm saying 10 million or higher, were having a difficult time shutting down and slowing down their operations. And the small businesses, they could close their doors that day and they could reopen the next day with a new plan or something else, selling masks, pivoting to do something else. And they were able to come back up to speed very quickly, whereas the big companies, once they shut down, it was really hard for them to bring their workers back and to accelerate moving forward. And as I looked at the data and as I looked at the words that people were using, they were things like momentum. We lost our momentum, and we can't really. We're having a hard time accelerating. And they were using all these words. And as I sat back and I looked at it, I realized they were using terms like mass, like how big a company is, and deceleration and acceleration and momentum. And I realized, oh my gosh, those are all physics terms. And I pulled down my physics textbooks along with some of my math textbooks, and I pulled out Newton's laws of motion. And I realized that, oh my God, the flow of business follows Newton's laws of physics. And so I created the physics of profit. And the physics of profit, one of the things about physics is they talk about using leverage. And we've all heard about leverage in business and compound growth and these kinds of things. So I started thinking about myself, how can we use compound leverage and compound growth to accelerate our returns with less effort? And that's where the foundation of what I'm doing today is coming. It's all rooted in math and statistics and physics. If I can validate it there, I know it's going to be legit. It's not going to be a sales pitch, like buy my stuff, right? This is all, now I have a mechanism by which I can investigate behaviors and translate them into a framework that's actionable with results with low effort.
That's fascinating. So give me an example of how you can accelerate a business using the levers and physics analogy or comparison.
So one of the things about physics and one of the things about calculus, what makes calculus great, is it gives us the ability to calculate instantaneous position in time. And they typically use that for acceleration and how fast a car is going and all these kinds of things. Well, I'm looking at like accelerating business, right? So here's the thing. This will blow your mind. Everybody that's in a manufacturing position, for instance, they're concerned with their margin. What's the margin on this job, right? Well, I got a good margin on this job. Well, I realize that a good margin doesn't mean anything until you apply time to that margin. If you have 100% margin and you're making $100 an hour, then you make $100 per hour. But if you make $100 of margin and it takes you 4 hours to deliver that job, then your margin is effectively $25 per hour. So, correct. And this is another thing, is that when people talk about margin, this is a really profitable job. No, it's not. it's not profitable until you cover the total cost for the month. And typically, when they use standard cost accounting, which was designed in the 30s and is still used today incorrectly, right? Your break even is like the last day of the month, because they're calculating based on their overhead for the month. So I basically said, look, let's take your jobs and take the hours that it takes to produce a job, divide it into your margin, and front load all of the jobs that have the highest revenue per hour. This depresses your break even in the month. And what happened was we quadrupled the profitability of customers with the same amount of work just by changing the order in which the work was done. Very low effort, huge return.
That's very interesting. That's fascinating.
That's just one of many.
Wow. So what are some of the common characteristics of businesses that are stalled or stagnant? And how do you identify the best starting points for transformation?
So I'm glad you asked that question. It's kind of like I almost primed you for it. We have done in-depth data analysis from our customers, and we have our clients send us their entire customer list by revenue by customer by year for 10 years. And we've analyzed 135,000 customer years of data since March of last year. And we look at it from year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, out to year 10. And what we're looking for is attrition. What is the churn rate from year 1 to year 2, and 2 to 3, and 4, year 4? And we compare that against the growth rate from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3. It's phenomenal. The attrition rate for businesses that are below $1 million. Now, let me say that, below 5 million, is between 64% and 94% per year of new customers. So you bring a new customer on, between 65 and 90% of those customers are not coming back. They're also the most expensive customer to work with because there's approvals involved, there's getting to know people, there's financing, there's paperwork, there's contracts, there's all this friction on the front end. And that's reflected by a very low annual value for that client. Now, when we go to year 2, assuming that you stuck with the clients that went with you, that 10 to 30% that moved forward, their annual value in year 2 is 346% of year 1. So what happens is their growth in year 2 is masking the inefficiency of year 1. So now we went in and we started looking at all those year 1 clients and understanding where was the friction, what was causing them to slow down the velocity, what was causing them to slow down their growth rate and their acceleration with you. And we have a whole list of defining factors that are involved there that we can now look at. Now, as far as the businesses are concerned that are problems for the business, it's not understanding what they're doing. They're in what I call survival mode. They're trying to keep the lights on. They're trying to keep the door open. They're going to take anything that walks through that door. They're going to take anything that sales guy is going to sell. Where are we going to get business? I don't care where it is. We'll figure it out. And the salespeople are like, well, I'm going to sell this. You guys figure out how to do it. And so what you're doing is you're adding friction because there's resources required and there's time required to sort all that stuff out. And then they may never have been a good client in the first place, and they may have zero potential to grow into the future. A one-time event is a perfect example of this. There's no future with that. There's no plan for the future. It's like they're just in this treadmill mode of literally treading water in the deep end of the pool until they get too tired, and then guess what? They go under the water and they never come back.
Right. So what would you suggest? What do you recommend?
Well, number one is businesses have a very poor ability to manage their cash flow. They're not using They're not using cash flow analysis. They're not using, any kind of cash flow projection, 13-week projection or anything like that. They're not doing any of that. They're managing based on the bank account. And it's super reactive because if they've got payroll due and they've got payroll taxes due and there's no money in the bank, everything stops. And the owner's going out collecting a check and they're knocking on doors and they're picking up calls and, they're delaying stuff. And it's very, very disruptive. And it's very disruptive to the employees because employees want a stable paycheck. They're counting on the company. And if they see the company managing for, tight cash flow, they're wondering like, what happens if they can't get their money? I'm not going to get paid. And this is one of the reasons why they have high employee churn is they want better stability. And because the companies are not managing for a stable cash base, they don't have enough cash in the bank to afford to pay employees and retain employees. So those employees are looking for better opportunities. Now, here's another.
Mark, that's a great point. What are some of the strategies that you recommend to your clients in order to manage cash flow better?
Profit first. Number one, profit first. And that's Mike Michalowicz's landmark book. It's easy to understand. We've created a really quick implementation plan. So if you don't want to work with a professional, you can reach out to me and I can send you a implementation plan that you can work through on your own. If you find that it's too much of an issue, then, we can talk about an engagement to help you hold you accountable to get you to work through it. Most people are not accountants. They're afraid of numbers. They're scared of what they're going to find. So it's like their head's in the sand.
So why does the profit first work? Like, what are the principles that, in your opinion, you've been doing it now for several years?
8 years.
8 years. And what have you seen that is so workable about profit first?
When you start small, people think that managing their cash flow is an insurmountable problem. So we start super small. And I start with a 1% allocation for profit and paying yourself minimum wage. Minimum wage. Some places it's still $7.50 an hour. But you know what? Business owners, they pay themselves when they need it. And so what they're doing is they're treating their business like a hobby. They're not treating it like a business. So by taking 1% every week, whatever the sales were for that week, take 1% of that and pay yourself minimum wage. Well, I can't find anybody for less than $15 an hour. Well, if you're not willing to pay yourself minimum wage, how do you feel subconsciously about paying somebody $15 an hour?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I resent it. Well, that's a negative attitude about your own business. So it's about getting them into a behavior structure, psychological behavior change, a pattern change that begins to treat their business like a business. And in the process of doing that, we educate them to the fundamentals of business growth. What is it that you need in order to position your business to go from 0 to 250, from 250 to 500, 500 to $1 million? Because at $1 million, which in today's world, thanks to inflation, is not that hard to get to. But you get to $1 million, there's a psychological thing in your mind that, I got $1 million business. Well, you really don't. You still have $1 million chaotic hobby, right? And then all of a sudden, but you're dealing with bigger numbers and you're dealing with bigger issues. And when something crashes and burns, it gets ugly fast. So we want to lay a foundation very quickly, which we do for free. I'll give you everything you need to do to get to $1 million at no cost and no obligation. Give you clarity on where you're going. And if if a client says, hey, I need help with this, we've got different levels of guidance that's available to them until they feel comfortable, until they want to start accelerating. I've got to get them to a point where they have some momentum before we can accelerate. And $1 million is really the ideal place to go because I can make a huge difference at $1 million a year. $1 million.
So when you have a business that got to $1 million, what do you do next? What are some of the strategies and tactics to get from that $1 million up?
So when we get to $1 million, what's your unique selling proposition? What makes you different than everybody else? How different are you, or can your competitors copy what you're doing? Right? That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is, there's just so many in my mind right now. There's another aspect of it is, okay, how defensible is your position? Meaning that if you're unique, how long is it going to take for your competitor to figure it out? In your market, what is the market that you're selling to? How big is that market? Is that market capable of growth? How many other competitors are there in your space? This is basic fundamental target marketing and understanding what you're doing. But when you say do market research and do target marketing, it freaks people out because they don't know how to do it. It's like pick up the phone book and start making some phone calls. Who are you buying your stuff from right now? I was in your store and I saw these shirts. They were amazing. Who are you buying them from? Right? Don't ask for the order. Use it for intel. Oh, we love our shirts, but the supplier is horrible to work with. Bing, 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 door just opened. Right? What's your plan? What's your sales plan? Is your plan buy my stuff, or is your plan value-based where you're delivering additional value? Almost every client, 95% of the businesses that we see when they come to us, 80% of them are basing their pricing on what I call competitive comparison. That's comparing against their competitors in the marketplace. Some are a little higher, some are a little lower, some are in the middle of the road. All of them are wrong. You're literally driving your profitability to the lowest level possible. And that's one of your root issues. The next best level, which 15% of the market uses, is cost plus. They know what their costs are, so they're adding some margin on it. But from the beginning of our conversation, we understand that margin means nothing until you hit break even. And so the order in which you do the work is super important, right? That only leaves 5% of people that understand how to sell on value. And my value model is where a prospect comes to you and says, Mark, what's the most expensive thing you can sell me? I want to buy as much of that as I can with the money I've got. And this is how much money I have. You've just completely destroyed the negotiation process. They're telling you, take everything I have. And how is that possible? How is it possible that my clients work from that position?
Yes.
I'm asking you a hard question. How is that possible?
Well, you are, because that's where you apply the profit first.
No, this is beyond profit first now.
Tell me.
What we're working on is the paradigm between cost. What's it going to cost me to work with you? What's it going to cost for this job? That's an expense, and we always reduce expenses. So you're driving yourself towards zero when you deal with how much is this going to cost. But if I work from a position of return on investment, if I can give you $4 for every dollar you spend with me, I'm going to spend every penny I've got.
Right.
I'm going to make $4 for every dollar I spend with you. That's an investment perspective, and only 5% of the market understands that. And that's validated by how many percent of people in our population are investment driven. How many people have money in their 401k? How many people manage their finances? Only 5%. And it's been that way for 50 years.
Right.
At least.
And that is a very good point. I mean, that's what I also talk my clients about, our clients, in terms of you're making an investment. What's the return on investment? It's always looking at the return on investment. I had a conversation with a prospective client today, and he goes, well, I'm looking at this and this and that. And I said, yeah, if we go ahead and do that, what is that worth for you? And he goes, yeah, even if I get one client, it will, the multiple of the return on investment will be amazing. Well, absolutely. And that's to look at it.
They're scared of that term ROI, just like they're scared of the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So what I say to them is, well, this sounds like it's pretty expensive for me to work with. I don't know if I can come up with the money. And I say, well, it's not going to cost you anything. Nothing. I'm willing to take on the risk. So you tell me, what is this worth to you if our work shows that if we can get a customer into year 2, it's worth 3.6 times or 360% of year 1. So let's look at your business and see what that is. That valuation comes out to $150,000 and your margin is 50%. So that increase in business is worth $75,000. Here's what I'll do. I'll increase that business by 150,000, but I want 50% of that margin. I'm willing to do that for 50% of the margin. Oh my God, that's really expensive. See, you're looking at it as an expense. You're not looking at it as a return. I'm undertaking the risk, and as a result of me undertaking the risk, I'm doing it to prove to you that it's possible, but I'm willing to do it because I know that you're resistant at this point, which means that it's going to be slow for you to make changes. So I'm going to have to take more, I'm going to have to prove to you, number one, this works. Number two, here's how it works with case studies. Number three, and most important, this will work for you. Because once you see that it works for you, you're going to commit to the next year, and it's only going to cost you $10,000 instead, or $12,000 instead of $50,000 or $75,000. Well, that makes perfect sense. That's the value of risk versus return. So that experiment right there, that thought experiment, is educating them on the concept of risk and return and output, because now it's not costing them 75%. It's costing them $12,000 to generate $138,000 of additional profit or additional margin. And they're like mind blown.
That's right. That's a great advice right there. So thank you for that.
Never advice, only guidance.
Guidance. That's right. Guidance.
And you know why I say that?
Why?
Because when I give you advice, I'm the authority and you're the receiver. And if it makes complete sense and you're not doing it, you're going to feel judged. So all I can do is say, this is what's worked in my business. This is how it worked in my business. This is how it will work for you. How do you feel about that?
Much better.
Now we're talking about the event and the process, not about me telling you what to do.
Absolutely. And that's the best way to do it, because then people will be willing to listen. And if they act on it, great. And if they don't, it's on their responsibility. Absolutely. Yeah. Mark, if people want to know more about you, they want to talk to you because they want to get more guidance, where should they, how can they do it? How can they get a hold of you?
Any social media platform, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and Instagram, it's Mark Coudray, at Mark Coudray. I am the only Mark Coudray on LinkedIn. I'm the only Mark Coudray on Facebook. My name is unique. So it's not hard to find me, right? They can also go to our website, which is catalystplan.com, CATALYSTPLAN.com. They can read about what I do. They can read success stories that are there. And most important, they can watch all the podcasts that I've ever done. And so they can see me in different positions, whether it's Mike Michalowicz or whether it's Business Success, Business Simplified, Shirt Show, Printavo, Print Hustlers, they're all there. And so what it does is it gives them the ability to see me present these concepts that are foundational to their success in multiple environments. And then they almost always reach out and say, can you do an assessment? Can we have a conversation and exploration about what we're doing? I have tons of free lead magnet tools that I share with you to help you gain clarity around your business. Let's have an exploration around what you think or what you feel is the biggest issue. And I have ways of determining whether that's the real issue or whether it's just a Band-Aid that you're trying to hide or cover or fix that you may not even know that there's a bigger issue underlying it. And there's never a judgment, ever.
That's beautiful. Good. So we will include it in the show notes so people can have very easy, no effort time to find you and get connected. Mark, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. That has been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. And I would love to come back. I've got so many more things that we can explore. And remember, like I asked at the beginning, think of the really hard questions that nobody answers because I've heard all the easy ones.
Sounds good.
All right.
Mark, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.